I finished going through all the coils and wrote down the resistance values on here, and in general things are looking pretty good. I got 43.9, should be 47. That one was off a little bit, but not really bad. The rest are much closer. 34, I got 33.5. 3.4, I got 3.1. If you add up these resistances in here, you get 2.4, and that's exactly what I got. Likewise, this should be 7.5, and I got 7.1, which is pretty close. Now, the other problem I found was here. This is the antenna coil. This measures 11 ohms across like it's supposed to, but I can't find any. I'm not measuring 0.7 ohms from this point to ground. I think there might be a break in here somewhere. And then there's still this to check out. Well, first I'll disconnect the lead and see if this resistance changes. I think I'll ask online about that too. That might be okay. There's only one way that this could be lower once I disconnect this and isolate it, and it indeed measures lower, is that there's a shorted turn in here, which is a little unlikely in just an air wound transformer like this, because really you'd need a short like across. In other words, these are, the coils are not overlapping. It's just a spiral of wire, and the only way that you would get a decrease in resistance is if there was a short like across a chunk of the coil. I just don't quite see how that would happen. So perhaps the schematic is just off a little bit. But this is definitely a concern. If this is open, this radio will not work, because you need that circuit from the antenna input going to ground to energize this coil to feed a signal into this side of the transformer and into the rest of the radio. I think the ground connection is this lug right here, and the input for the antenna coil I think is this wire up here, and it winds around down the length here. So there's got to be a tap part way for this point, which seems to be good. So if there's a break in here, if I'm lucky, the break will be just like right near the connection in here, and I can just like resolder that on. So I'm thinking the break would be down, towards the bottom of the coil here. A little bit tricky to chuck on. I think I'll do a little bit of a visual inspection, but it may come down to I have to unsolder these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or so connections, remove this nut, and the whole coil will lift right out. I unsoldered one end of this coil to isolate it. It does indeed measure 47 ohms, so that will be something to check on, but for the time being I'm going to leave it alone. And as far as this guy goes, well, as near as I can make out, there's a little wire going down into this hole here, and that gets soldered onto the other side to a ground lug. So I imagine somewhere between here and a little bit higher up there's a break. There's also a tap somewhere on the coil. I think it's this little fine wire coming out here, and that's this point. So I think everything from about here up is fine. It's bad down here. There seems to be some kind of waxy varnish type coating on there, which is kind of corroded and crumbly and nasty. I'm going to try taking some alcohol, or if that doesn't work, some other type of solvents to clean this off so I can get a better idea what's going on. Worst case scenario, I could get some enameled wire and rewind this coil, or at least from here down. Well, while I ponder that, here are the new reproduction rubber washers I got. So these will sit in the chassis like this, which gives it a nice cushion when it's mounted in the cabinet. And here are the new capacitor mounts, and here's the old ones. Some of these sections are okay, but some like this are just rock hard. Down the center of these was a metal tube. I'll pry these out and then slide them in here so I can reuse them. And they mount in the chassis in these 3 holes. So I imagine I'll need to kind of work them in and mush them around to get them locked in. These old ones broke in half, I assume with age, because they're so hard. The 2 sections just split in half. So these were easy to get out. So I think if I just kind of rotate it around and work it in and mush it in, I can get those to go into the holes. It was pretty easy to mush these through, and then I slid those metal sleeves inside. The capacitor has 3 threaded holes on the bottom, and you line those up so it floats on those rubber pads, and then there are 3 bolts that come up from the bottom. Tighten it down so it's not so loose like this, but you don't want to make it too tight because it's supposed to float a little bit. And again, that's to provide some isolation between the vibrations of the speaker and the tuning capacitor. But these work great. They fit into the chassis very well, and they're the right size and all that good stuff, and nice and bouncy. I went online and posted a comment on the Antique Radio forum to Matt's thread, who's also restoring a Philco 60, and he's the guy I mentioned earlier who was having trouble with his coils. And first off, he confirmed that not only he but several other people are also getting 45 ohms for that coil instead of the stated 85, so I think it's safe to assume that the schematic's wrong and my coil is just fine. Secondly, it turns out that it's fairly common for that 0.7 ohm section of the antenna coil to be open, and he gave me a link to the Philco Radio forum where somebody took the trouble to trace out those coils and identify the lugs where all these connections go to, so that should help me pin this down. And more promising, Matt, his AM portion seems to be working fine with that opened 0.7 ohm shortwave section. So I think I'm going to continue on with rebuilding the radio and save that for later. So since I've pretty well stripped down this whole radio, what I'm going to do is start from the power supply and work my way back to the antenna, rebuilding the radio. With the power supply in place, I'll be able to, just power that up like I did before with the dim bulb tester, and I can put those capacitors back in and all that good stuff before I mess with any of the more delicate stuff over here. But I'll save that for tomorrow. Last thing I got for you is I did let my knobs soak for a while in some soapy water, and most of the crud came off. Then I polished them up a little bit with Novus number 2, then Novus number 1. So I'm going to go pop these on my Motorola VT71 and see how they look. Here's my blonde Motorola that I restored a while ago and did some videos on. So you can see these inner knobs here are kind of like a dark chocolate, and these are sort of a mottled lighter brown. That's why I want to replace them with these. So let's see how it looks. And there they are. Looks really nice, I think. They all fit just fine. I guess I'll sell off these on eBay in case somebody else needs some, and I'm sure somebody does. Oh, I guess there is one last thing to show you while I'm over here. This is a similar Motorola 7VT2. It's the Bakelite version. I still have a bit more work to do on this. Like I need to clean up this a bit more and repaint some of this brass paint here. One other thing I was missing when I got this set, which is a real basket case, I'll talk more about it later, but it was missing the logo, which is a kind of it's the earlier Motorola logo, which looks like this. It's kind of a squiggly stylized M. So I just went online and printed one out on paper and just stuck it on here. Well, just about a week or two ago, I scored the real deal. So, you know, you ask around, it's amazing what's floating around out there. So, there we go. Alright, that's all for now.